Hello, everybody. What's up? It is Werner von Wallenrod back with another record for you today. This time it is a new record by a new artist, or at least not a new artist, but a contemporary artist. Just so you know, hey, new music. You can't say, hey, Werner von Wallenrod is always Mr. Old School. Except, I guess this guy does have some history, he kind of goes way. I take it all back. But no, it is a new record by a contemporary artist. Just came out. It is the latest release by what we see. I've got his whole back catalog kind of lined up behind me here. Whirlwind D. Now, I have blogged plenty about Whirlwind D. I think I've blogged about every single one of those. Maybe I missed one. I don't think I did. As they've come out. So if you follow my blog, you know an awful lot about them. But real quick, I know sometimes some people watch my videos but don't read the blog or vice versa. So I'll give a little bit of history that I would normally skip in my blog posts. Whirlwind D, who is he? He's from a group called Solid in Mind originally, and they had their first record out in 1990 on the label called Liberty Grooves, and that was kind of it. It was pretty much just that, and then much later in the 2000s, he re-released that kind of rare single with an unreleased B-side and some Solid Mind stuff that never came out. Those are the first kind of two records there behind me. With another guy named Johnny F. They were a duo. And then Whirlwind D kind of went solo and just started doing all new music in the 2000s. And then every, year pretty much. Mostly now on the label Beeline Records, which is his label. I mean, I don't think he owns it necessarily, but he's very closely associated with it. And he's been putting out either a new album or a new single or a new EP pretty much every single year. And today we've got his brand new latest one, 2018. Real quick before we get deep into the music, I just want to say that Whirlwind D is definitely somebody who clearly appreciates vinyl. He puts out vinyl exclusive stuff. He always puts out in really nice picture covers, high quality release, thick vinyl usually. Okay, sometimes he's, as we all do these days in tightening costs and stuff and shrinking physical media, has resorted to 7 inches once or twice. But always great stuff. Like even this one, also comes with an attractive, press sheet and everything inside the vinyl and all. So always a first class, top of the line package from anything from Whirlwind D, just in terms of the actual record. So if you're a collector, definitely appreciate that kind of stuff. But okay, now let's actually talk about what's critically important, the actual music. Beats, Bits, and Bobs is ostensibly an EP, and I say ostensibly because what do you think of as an EP? Like 6 songs, and then, 10 songs is like an LP, and then a single, like a 12-inch single is like 3 songs. So, I remember when Bobby Jimmy's Erotic, there's an example, but it's the one that springs to mind. Bobby Jimmy's Erotic Psychotic EP came out, it was in stores, and it was only 5 songs. I remember back then, talking to my friends, we were all sort of like, 5 songs is pretty, calling it pretty thin for an EP. This is really just an extended maxi single. And this is 4 songs, so I tend to think of it more as a 12-inch, but whatever, that gets into your real hardcore, nerdcore classification stuff. They do, he does pack it up with instrumentals and some acapellas on here too, so, But basically, I would sort of consider it a 12-inch, and actually, as we're going to get into, I would think it's a bit more satisfying if you think of it as a 12-inch, and I'll explain why as we go into the music. So, Beats, Bits, and Bobs, as the title implies also, it's sort of just like a little bits of everything, kind of a jumble mix. It's not like a themed album or anything like that. This is sort of, whatever he was sort of working on at the time, mixed together some random kind of elements, which might make you think, okay, lesser Whirlwind D, okay, if you're a hardcore fan who has to have everything, you would get something like Beats, Bits, and Bobs. But otherwise, this is maybe one a more casual listener or some, I'm on the fence about getting this one, would pass on. Except actually, if only for the main first lead song, I would say absolutely not. And that first song is Labels. Labels, the lead track, is a monster. It's killer. It's great. We're talking like greatest hits material here. This is really the reason to own this. Like I said, if you think of it as a 12-inch, think of it as a Labels 12-inch, and this is a must-have. If you worry about, some of the other stuff really does get to feel a bit more like Beats, Bits, and Bobs, eclectic kind of stuff kind of thrown onto the mix. But this is a must-have. This is the one, he already made a video for it. I mean, I'm sure he's aware that this is the winner. This is the jam on here. He's working, interestingly, with a new producer, at least, new to me and new in his catalog. I'm not familiar with him all, a guy named Jar One. But the production is fantastic. It really kind of reminds me of classic, sort of Large Professor, some of his best stuff. It reminds me of that kind of feel, a sort of a jazzy feel, but not super jazzy, a little bit deeper, definitely more kind of hip hop, sort of 90s, but this doesn't feel like a dated 90s track at all. So the production is fantastic, and I'm going to play a clip of it, of course, but actually, you know, the way I kind of shoot, you know, the camera at the record player probably won't even really do it justice, because it's some really kind of subtle, very cool production. So I would urge you actually to seek out the music video for the full song so you can really appreciate it, because again, the production is killer. But it's not just the production, and also some great scratches on here. Again, Whirlwind D always gets some great scratches by several DJs. Tones One, I think, does it on this one. No, Specific does on this one. Specific, actually, he's the guy who owns Beeline Records. So anyway, you got that. But then when you think of the song Labels, I mean, obviously what first comes to mind is the GZA song Labels. And they definitely have a lot in common. They're both using classic record labels and talking about them. So, you know, as you remember from the Wu-Tang song, he took all the classic hip-hop labels and kind of use them into lyrics, you know, like Tommy ain't my motherfucking boy, you know, you ain't from a tough city, where of course Tough City is a record label, and he kind of spins it into the sentence. And, you know, this does not have that gimmick. It's not like that, which is good, because I mean that was fine at the time, but once about like 30-40 rappers jumped onto that bandwagon, once you had like pink cookies in a plastic bag, like that was enough of that gimmick. So I'm glad Whirlwind D doesn't do that. He does name drop a lot of lyrics, but a lot of labels, but he's actually talking about them directly. So it's not a whole thing like, you know, oh, Tommy ain't my boy. It's more like I used to listen to, you know, Sugar Scoop. So, and that is one label that actually they use reference a lot in the hook and all, which is kind of an odd choice, but, you know, like Def Jam, Cold Chill, and all that kind of stuff. It's about him talking about his youth and getting into hip-hop, and it's much more just sort of a direct, straight, you know, conversational style narrative that's more relatable. It's pretty cool. So that's Labels. All-around masterpiece. Now, I don't mean to say the rest of this EP is crap or anything. There's also some really good stuff on here, but that's the one. You buying this record, I'd say you're buying it for Labels. Actually, the second song is, to me, the weakest, Reap the Whirlwind. It's definitely more of a battle rap. You get that from the title. Well, one kind of cool thing I'll mention as I'm talking about it is they have little bios of the songs. Not only is there the press sheet, but little bios of each song that Whirlwind D wrote, but sort of the thinking behind the song or where they came from on the back cover. So right away he tells you, like, okay, this is my battle rap and all that. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a great song because you can never go wrong with battle raps. But this is more of like, he's got a lot of live guitar on this one. It's almost more of his sort of like Kid Rock kind of influence. I mean, Kid Rock is maybe a bad example, you know, but sort of like when Public Enemy would get guitars on there, and, you know, like it's not quite that rap rock thing, like it is a little bit more classically hip, but, you know, I don't know, it's still too rock and roll for me. It's not really for me. It's all right, it's okay. I could listen to it on the EP and enjoy it. It's not like, oh, I gotta pick it up and skip it, but it's definitely not a song I would go back to, as opposed to Labels, which I'll be going back to all the time. Then next up is the Run Fast remix. Run Fast is the song he did a couple of years ago on his album, I think it was on No Man's Land, which would be the one sort of right over my head there. I forget, but I think it was on No Man's Land, which is a duet with Phil Mochill, for, of course, you know, the Philly MC, who was the cartoonist for Rap Sheet, amongst many other things. And, you know, if you know your independent hip-hop, I'm sure you're very familiar with Phil Mochill. So he sounds great on here. It's a really cool duet to have him on a Whirlwind D record. So this is the remix. And the only problem with this one is just that the original is so great, this just kind of pales in comparison. Again, it's not like a whack beat or anything, but the first one is like this great sort of classic Eric B. and Rakim feel to the instrumental, like, you know, really kind of bassy and heavy, sort of a little bit of like a little follow leader meets, you know, let the rhythm hit them kind of track. So that's just great. And it's one of those things, you know, a good lesson in hip hop is when you got a killer beat, that's not the song in the remix. You know what I mean? Like it happens, you know, it's like you think of like Strong Island, you know what I mean? They've remixed that a couple times, but that beat is what really sells the song. I mean, they also sound fantastic on the beat, and it's great emceeing, but, you know, that instrumental is untouchable, so why would you remix it? You know, if you are going to remix a single that has like a killer signature beat, like Flavor in Your Ear or something, you do it, you just replace the lyrics, you get new vocalists on there, you know, you get some guest MCs, like 5 on it, you know, say, oh, well, we'll get E40 on here, because you don't want to change, I got 5 on it, that, you know, classic loop and everything is what everybody thinks of when you hear I got 5 on it, that and the hook. So you don't want to change that and then put in some kind of electro beat or something. You know, you want to maybe change the vocals if you're going to mess with it at all. So that's what's going on here. It's the same vocals. He doesn't change them. The point is he changes the instrumental from instrumental that was by Mr. Fantastic originally and was fantastic. It was a great track. So this one is fine. You know what I mean? It's just you're always going to compare it to the original, and it's always going to lose. So you see where I'm going now. Now you see kind of why works as a 12-inch with one killer track, but not necessarily as an EP. But we do get back to a bit of an upswing again here at the end, except now already, we're on the kind of more mature hip-hop, a little bit of a 90s throwback, more for older heads, definitely not kind of, again, the people looking for like a new Cardi B kind of, or gimmicky, not for the teens, not for the youngsters kind of stuff already. But if you're a younger listener, now really leave the room because this is a real throwback track. It's called Radioactive Bass. And it is a pure, apparently, again, just from reading the notes, apparently they're going to do a whole kind of throwback electro album on Beeline Records. And then that project got scrapped, but the song was saved and preserved. Again, perfect to have an EP like Bits and Bobs to throw that on there. So this is real electro vocoder, like the very classic vocoder vocals on there. Lots of just sort of repeating keyboard riffs and stuff like that. If you like that style of music, that 80s kind of stuff, from not even, I was going to start to say Planet Rock, but not even that, more like Twilight 22, that kind of stuff, freestyle, then you're going to really enjoy it because it is a great example of it. They really nail it. So that's what's great about it. The only thing a little bit disappointed is that it is a little too repetitive and simplistic. I know that is often, a signature element of some electro hip hop and stuff like that. You think of like Dynamix, they're not there having, it's almost like a simple loop repeating for 4 minutes for each song. But, and this has a couple loops that kind of go in and out and interchange and stuff like that. And the vocoders kind of repeat the vocals. But, if you had some kind of, I know a lot of electro isn't rapping. But if you had a little verse in there, like a Cosmo D kind of thing, you think of like a Space is a Place, then that would turn this from a 7 to a 10. Then this would be a classic. Like, that's a song I would revisit every day too. It really needs some additional vocals besides for the basic chorusy vocals. There's a little bit of spoken word kind of stuff. And again, not spoken word, like spoken word over vocoder, like electro style spoken word at the beginning and end, but no real verses or anything. The middle gets a little, just like hook, 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 hook. So if they actually had some straight old school kind of rapping in there as well, it would be perfect. It would be amazing. As it is, it almost sort of feels like an instrumental, because again, the vocoder vocals basically are instrumental in a sense. So it's cool. It's an interesting experiment. It's definitely enjoyable. I like it. And again, it's even a bit of an upswing for this EP, but not on par with Labels. And not necessarily a must-have kind of song. It's definitely an interesting experiment and a cool thing to get on an EP like Bits and Bobs. But again, go back to it and add some vocals. Add some raps. And like I said, then he's got a couple instrumentals, a couple acapellas, not all of them, but you can predict which ones. Just the acapella for Reap the Whirlwind and Labels, just the instrumental for Labels and Reap the Whirlwind and Run Fast Remix. Because again, Radioactive Bass essentially is already just an instrumental, so therefore it wouldn't make sense to have an acapella, and it wouldn't make sense to have an instrumental of it. And Run Fast, I guess I could put the acapella on there, but that's a song from a previous project, really, so it makes sense that this is just a new instrumental to an old song, so you just get the new instrumental. So I hope this hasn't come off as me being overly critical because I'm sort of harping on the negatives, because really it should be, I would say, effusive, because Labels is, might be going a little bit too far to say his best song. I'd really have to go through the rest of his catalog a couple more times, but it's up there. It's great hits material, fantastic. And so, not to keep harping on it, it really works as a 12-inch single with a few extra B-sides if you don't think of it as an EP. And you know what? It's not like one of those $100 record kind of things. This is reasonably priced, high-quality release, picture cover and all that. So you can get it as a 12-inch single and just dig it and appreciate it. And I absolutely recommend it because it's terrific. Labels, Bits and Bobs, so is the actual EP title you're looking for. So now let's listen to some clips. Again, we'll start with Labels, but after this, if you dig it at all, check out the music video for the full quality, and then just get the vinyl. Bam.
Here's a little story that must be told about the labels and the fables and the b-boys of old. Back in the day when I was doing my thing, record labels, turntables I was able to bring. My heart on my sleeve, all the beats that I need.
say that bombing can never win a war. Well, my answer to that is that it has never been tried yet, and we shall see. They sowed the wind, and now they are going to reap the whirlwind.
Jagged bars, slice and dice your patterns, leave lithium-soaked scars on par with no one. No sun can ever even manage dismantle your mental with nonsensical damage. Cause panic at the sight, follow the light and not the hype. While a wipe takes swipe, MCs take flight and face a might. Mike Stalker, Black Cloud Walker, escort you to the battle, step up and then afford you. Passive aggression to maximize the impression. Sit tight and open your books for this lyrical lesson. No fessing, no flaking, you awaken, earthquaking with the whirlwind. Crown taken. Calamita, ceramica etch with Italica kind of itch. Trace battles that rattle through homes and all the cattle. Stories told, legends crafted from castle to chapel. From the side of the eye, you see your shadow moving, bruising the air with looks confusing, pounding deeper, penetrating meters. Weaker MCs breaking down into liters. Features fast, though punching your speakers. Revolutions coming, the world all teeters. Changes appearing, approaching, encroaching, scoping for opening a place that's closing. Hosting and coaching, hoping for voting. Revolutions rife, changes approaching. Losing, excusing, your heart starts booming. Beads of sweat drip down, they are looming. Up on the horizon, towering above is an Iron Man with a plan ready to shove. Attacking weak suckers with the 1-2 flow. He's got fire in his eyes, it's designed to throw. Boulders from shoulders, up on your grill. Your fingers freeze, reaching for your pills. Rock up on the hearthstone, rooted to the ground. Steps draw closer, so eye makes a sound. Pounding deep as you start to weep. Find your inner strength as it's time to leap. From this place that's strung to a close. Time ticks by as you scale the slope. Run for your life, run real fast. Enemies closing, about to go past. Run for your life, run real fast. Enemies closing, about to go past. PMC and Whirlwind D. I'm Mr. Fantastic in the power of three.
Get a drink of water, sell this online or in a brick and mortar order. In a quarter, public opinion or a slaughter. Suckers who never brought up.
lived on a planet, and they worshipped one fresh sound. 1 million years have now passed, but a light still glows underground. Radiation escapes into music, and we worshipful of the sound. Radioactive waste, plutonium-6 escapes. Radioactive waste, plutonium-6 escapes. Radioactive waste, plutonium-6